Hello and welcome to Cryptid by State, Kansas. Here we are at the first Monday of the month, so you know what that means. A new Cryptid by State video. Today we are visiting a location that just barely managed to take the top spot by only one extra vote. So this goes to show that every vote counts when it comes to this series. I honestly wasn't sure of what I would find cryptid-wise when it came to this state, since stories aren't too prominently told from the area. Although the state is more well known for UFO sightings and hauntings, with the famed Portal to Hell being located in Stull Cemetery. However, while the list isn't extensive, it does have way more than I thought I would find. So, join me once again as we continue our Cryptid Family Road Trip, where we are leaving our previous location of Montana and traveling 16 hours southeast to our new destination of Kansas. Kansas has a fairly straightforward history, which this is good news for those who don't like the history portions of these videos, and bad news for those, such as myself, who do enjoy learning a little bit about each state's beginnings. In 7000 BC, Paleo Indians first set foot into the area now known as Kansas. These groups of people remained on the land for most of its history, excluding the northernmost portion, which would later be home to the Pueblos. Then around 1450, the Wichita people established what was called as the Great Settlement, named Atzanoa, in present-day Arkansas City. The first Europeans to set foot in the area was famed Spanish explorer Francisco Vázquez de Coronado in 1541. Following this, the Spanish introduced horses to the Plains Indians, and this greatly changed the lives of the natives. By the 17th century, the dominant culture were the Kansa or Kaw Nation, the Osage Nation, and the Pawnee Nation. It was during this time that the tribes wiped out the Spanish military during one of their expeditions, and this ended Spain's interest in the further exploration into the area. In 1803, the United States acquired much of Kansas during the Louisiana Purchase, however it was considered an unorganized territory. What is interesting is that in 1806, Brigadier General Zebulon Pike, the same person who Pikes Peak is named after, designated Kansas as the Great American Desert on all his maps. From June 4, 1812 to August 10, 1821, Kansas was considered a territory until it was combined with the Missouri Territory. After Missouri became a state, it was labeled again unorganized, and very few settlers made their homes there. In 1820, the U.S. designated the entire area as an Indian territory and banned settlers from entering it. Things didn't last, since by 1850, people began illegally squatting on the land and demanding that the area be open to everyone. By May 30, 1854, Kansas officially became its own territory, which in relation didn't bode well for the Native Americans. Not long after, many of the tribes were moved to Oklahoma. On January 29, 1861, Kansas became the 34th state to enter the Union. The flag of Kansas is in a style that gives much representation to the state's history. A variant of this banner was first created by a woman named Hazel Avery in 1925 for use in the 4th of July parade in Lincoln. It was then officially adopted as a state symbol on March 23, 1927. The flag mainly depicts the state seal. This includes many symbolisms of pioneer life, such as a river with steamboats representing commerce, the cabin, settler, plow, and horse all standing for agriculture, and the sun is seen rising in the east. It also shows a wagon train heading west for American expansion, bison, and 2 Native Americans on horseback. Above the mountain is a sky with 34 stars representing Kansas being the 34th state. At the top is the state motto of Ad Astra Per Aspera, or to the stars through difficulties. Above the seal is a sunflower, which is the state crest and state flower. Below this is a braided blue and gold bar, officially called a heraldic torse or wreath, which represents the Louisiana Purchase. Finally, at the very bottom is the state's name, which was added in 1961 to distinguish it from all the other flags that may look similar in design. Alright, let's see what cryptids are found in the Sunflower State. Kansas isn't known to have a lot of cryptids, but what is there is quite fantastic. Starting off, we aren't beginning in the water as usual, but we will look to the skies. Various locations around the state are said to be home to a living pterosaur. I even saw one report claiming that a spectral form is even seen, as if it were a vision from the past. In 1994, a report came in that a pterosaur was seen near Garden City. On a clear summer day, an unnamed witness was outside their house with their sibling and uncle. At one point, they started running down a dirt road when it was noticed that there was an enormous shadow being cast over them from above. When they looked up, they saw a flying creature that appeared to be the size of a small plane and had a wingspan of approximately 30 feet. The body was dark gray in color, it didn't possess any feathers, its head had a long beak and crest coming out the back of it, and its long skinny tail ended in a triangular shape. The wings were said to resemble that of a bat, containing a fleshy membrane. The witness claimed that they didn't feel scared, but simply stood there in shock watching it fly off towards the horizon. Another sighting states that a man and his wife were driving on the highway leaving the town of Hudson. While on their trip, they noticed something odd in the tree line following the road. At first, it was unclear what the thing was, but as they neared the end of the trees, it became apparent that whatever it was huge. While no real description was given, the couple claimed that it resembled a dragon. In 2018, two people were out driving around Tonganoxie. While on this trip, they suddenly saw a large bird swoop down over the top of their car and continue to fly off. It was said to be much larger than their vehicle. It had a leathery, eggshell-colored body, jointed pointy wings, a long beak, and a cone coming from the back of its head. Oddly enough, this activity was preceded by strange yellow lights in the sky. While the sighting doesn't indicate this, it honestly reminds me of the lights said to be produced by the famed Ropin. Outside of these few excerpts, there have been at least 14 different pterosaur sightings in Kansas alone. I should also add to this part of the video that thunderbirds have been seen in the state as well. Now, keeping to the air, there have been a few sightings of a being that I'm very fond of. For quite some time, there have been sightings of a strange bat-like creature around the Kansas City area. It was said to have the body the size of a man, large leathery wings with a 12-foot wingspan, the face of an ugly man, and glowing red eyes. In 2018, a man was sitting on his front porch when he kept hearing an odd clicking noise. After a while, he tried to find where the sound was coming from, and was shocked to see this creature standing in a nearby tree. Later that night, he claimed that the creature was even heard walking around on his roof, making the same noises as before. In 2019, a man was walking his dogs at night, when he suddenly noticed the same being flying over his head about the height of telephone poles. He claimed it didn't make a single noise, but it flew away after his dogs caught sight of it and started barking. Later he came to an empty lot and found the remains of a dead rabbit, and surrounding it were fairly large feathers. In February of 2021, a man from Goodland stated that he enjoyed taking walks at night, and one summer he encountered the creature as well. He said that he was walking down a dirt road in a wooded area when he caught sight of what appeared to be glowing red lights in the trees. As he neared, the lights disappeared, and he found extremely large bird-like prints in the dirt. It was said that they were twice the size of his own foot. He decided it was best to return home, but for weeks after, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. At one point, he even caught sight of the being again, and he described it as having a large humanoid body, and the eyes glowed the deepest red you can imagine. He stated that even though all the other features were hazy, he couldn't get the image of those eyes out of his head. Moving on, the only water-based cryptid that I could locate outside of an upcoming honorable mention is the famed Sinkhole Sam. Not a lot of information is known, but this creature was first seen in 1951 near McPherson County. At that time, Inman Lake had been drained, and with this left behind decent-sized pools of water, locally known as sinkholes. The description fits with the story, but it is believed that the holes were actually part of an underground cavern system. One summer, a Mennonite boy named Albert Burt Neufeld and a friend named George Reger were out fishing in one of these sinkholes. Suddenly, a serpent-like creature emerged that was said to be 15 to 30 feet long and the diameter of a car tire. The being appeared to just be swimming about, but Albert decided to take a shot at it with his rifle. The creature vanished below the surface, and Albert thought he had killed it, but George felt that he had missed. Following this, more and more reports began to emerge, and by the next year, it had become quite widespread. At one point, a newspaper writer named Ernest Dewey, who was known to write stories poking fun at sightings, came to the town with a quote-unquote expert. This expert then claimed all kinds of outlandish things about his fake knowledge of the beast, and even stated that the creature was misidentified and was simply a Fupengurkel, which, it shouldn't be a shock, he completely made up that term. These antics caused the town a lot of trouble, but it should be noted that originally both Albert and George were known to be truthful, but weren't interested in sharing their encounter. However, as stated, many feel that the creature actually lived in the underwater caverns. Interestingly, in the 1960s, in the nearby county of Kingman, there were multiple sightings of a 25-foot-long snake, one of which was seen dragging a calf into the water. This was then followed up by a party trying to hunt the creature, but they were unsuccessful. Our final beings are important and interesting enough to warrant being on the main list, but their stories aren't that in-depth. Native American lore stated that a being that was originally thought to promote fertility lived in the state and was known as the Deer Woman. She is said to appear as either a beautiful young woman or as a half-woman, half-deer hybrid. While she can be helpful, she also has a more devious side. Much like a succubus, she is known to draw men away from the village and into the forest. While it is unclear what happens next, it is known that these men never return. Oddly enough, there have been other sightings akin to this, where I saw different reports stating that it has been seen hanging around cemeteries. While I'm not sure if it is the same creature, since this version has piercing blue eyes and the Deer Woman has brown, the feeling that people report is that whatever it is, it doesn't have good intentions. For all we can tell, it could actually be a skinwalker, since they are known to frequent grave sites. The next creature is a fantastic one, and comes from the lore of the Wichita, Crow, and Iowa tribes. This being is simply known as Sharp Elbows, and for a completely justified reason. It is a purely evil being that takes a humanoid shape, but it has a second face on the back of its head, and it has long sharp spikes protruding from its elbows. It utilizes these spikes to kill people, especially women and children. What makes it worse is that it apparently does so just because it likes to kill, and for no other reason. The lore doesn't state what exactly it is, or why it does what it does. Honestly, this is troubling, since most creatures from Native American lore have some greater purpose, or even a moral to the legend. But with this one, it simply exists. I find this rarity more convincing that this might not simply be a legend, and is in fact a creature that might actually exist, as terrifying as that may be. As usual, we have our honorable mention section for cryptids that just didn't make the cut, or there wasn't a lot of information about them. Bigfoot is very prominent in this state, with all types of versions being reported. Falling in line with this is a real oddity known as a Beeman from Kansas City. It was first seen in the 1900s, and through the years, descriptions vary greatly from simply being a gorilla, a Sasquatch, or even a dogman. In saying that, there are quite a few dogman or man-wolf sightings. We have a bit of a rarity here, since there are reports of mountain lions and black panthers, but I found that Kansas is one of the few states without a known population that actually admits that they have been found there. Typically, when we talk about lake monsters, we think of the plesiosaur or serpent type, but the state has a very different one. I saw many reports from various locations such as Cheney Lake, Milford Dam, and Lake Wilson Dam, all talking about giant man-eating catfish. Apparently, these fish are known to eat humans whole, and a few divers have encountered the creatures. I saw varying reports of a wolf girl being seen, but it appears to be highly debated as to if it is a hoax or something very real. There were a few sightings of a nondescript monster being found in Clinton Lake. Speaking of which, the Native Americans have quite a few legends of giant horned serpents making their home in the lakes and even utilizing underwater caverns. While not a cryptid, you can find a bridge troll in Wichita behind the old West Star power plant. It isn't a creature, but rather a sculpture that was placed under the grating in 2007. At nighttime, it is illuminated and looks quite cool. Legend states that Tuttle Creek River houses a weird creature that many have claimed resembles a manatee. In Lyon County, a couple claimed to have seen a bipedal man-bull hybrid walking around Olpe Lake. I'll end this on an old urban legend that I found rather humorous. During the early days, it was said that settlers encountered a rare grasshopper infestation. While that may not seem really odd, these beings were said to be the size of mules and would even spit tobacco from their mouths. These creatures would attack people, eat fence posts, and ravage the crops. Now, the part of the story that brought a smile to my face was that these grasshoppers were said to wield axe handles, whips, and pitchforks as weapons to use against people who try to get between them and their meal. Maybe I shouldn't laugh, since Kansas has a lot of UFO sightings, and they might actually have been aliens. As I end this, I hope you enjoyed it, and that I made Kansas proud. This area did have a lot of creatures that we have come to expect, but it also had a few oddities. I greatly appreciated the lore behind the legend of Sharp Elbows. That seems like something that would be truly terrifying. Please remember to keep voting for which state you would like to see next in our series. Be sure to join me next time, as I am planning on making a new real versus real video on a strange ghost phenomenon. If you haven't yet done so, do please consider subscribing to my channel for more content like this. Also, it would be greatly appreciated if you share my videos with someone you know who may enjoy this type of genre. With that, be safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Later!